Wow. Looks like some kind of a traffic jam going on out here almost. Hello there everyone, it's UXW Bill here with you once again. And I am sure that some of you will undoubtedly remember this car. Although I never talked about it at great length, this is a 1998 Ford Escort ZX2 model. And this particular car, although it's not horribly high mileage, it has definitely seen its fair share of action over its life. If you look down here at the hood, you can see it's not real even with the rest of the body, and cars had a little impact there on that side as well. Unfortunately, cars like this are kind of considered to be throwaway cars, and so few, if any, people really take care of them like they ought to. Now, for those of you who watch the Keykeeper's channel at Walsh Monster 2005, you might remember that he was troubleshooting this car for a no-start condition. Unfortunately, its owners were not particularly precise about what exactly constituted a no-start condition. I'm going to go in here and get out of the wind a little bit so you can hear me better. A no-start condition, of course, can mean many different things. Could mean the battery's bad, charging system's not working, there's bad electrical connections. I finally was able to pry some information out of them concerning the exact symptoms of the car. Sometimes, when it was driven, when the owner came back to it and went to operate it again, they turned the key and nothing happened. The instrument panel remained active, the warning lights remained on. I do believe the electrical cooling and heating fan shut down, and the radio probably turned off as well because of the way the car is wired, but the starter motor simply would not crank. As you can see, this car has a 5-speed manual transmission in it, and there are definitely some issues going on with the transmission as well that we may be having a look at a little bit later. Suffice it to say that when I was driving this car, I could not for the life of me get it to go in either 4th or 5th gear. I could get 1st, 2nd, and 3rd just fine, but neither Furhead nor I, we both drove this car, could get it to go into 4th and 5th gear. Now my dad managed to get it to go into 4th and 5th gear after a little bit of diddling around, but then he couldn't get it back into 1st. And so there are definitely some issues, either in the transmission itself or its shifting linkage. Well, the Keykeeper, I told him to look at the clutch safety switch, the switch that makes sure this car can only start when the clutch pedal is fully depressed, so that the owner of the car, or any would-be operator of the car, can't get in and forget to press the clutch in, and then end up getting a wicked surprise or finding that they have just seriously abused the starter on this little automobile. Well, as it turns out, the Keykeeper, he looked at a clutch switch, he pronounced it okay, he put the car back together, we whisked it back to its owners, and same problem. So now, bringing in the big guns. I've been looking at the situation, my dad's been looking at the situation, and I still thought that there was something going on here with the clutch safety switch, because the car never showed any indication of losing power, and the charging system on the car all across the board was putting out pretty much 14.2 volts constantly, which, while it's not necessarily the whole story, did tend to suggest that the little car's electrical system was in fact good. In fact, the only thing we found under hood was a slightly questionable ground near the starter motor, but it didn't look like it was near bad enough that it would keep the car from starting, and it should cause a car, as most cars will, to lose power after a faulty cranking attempt. Let's see if I can actually get down in here and show you in more detail what's going on. But the first thing you can very obviously see, obviously the clutch pedal in this car would take a lot of action. It would be used very often. And you can see, in fact, that it has lost its little cushioning rubber pad over the years, while the brake and the accelerator still have theirs. So let's look underneath here, provided I can get my big bad self down in there with a handy cam. I'll go ahead and turn the light on because I know we're going to need it. And let's have a look. Oh boy, at what's going on here underneath the dashboard of the car. At some point in time, someone has been working on the universal joint in the steering column, and as you may be able to see, there are 2 clutch safety switches in play here. Now, both of the switches have been removed from the car at the moment. There's one that goes up here, and this one probably wouldn't be subjected to that much abuse over its lifetime, because it's only going to come into play when the clutch pedal actually returns upward, which it will do fairly gracefully unless someone were to for some reason wedge their foot underneath it and forcibly pull it back up. The other one, which is the one we're actually interested in, sits on these two studs back in here. And this is the one that really matters. This is the one that when the clutch is depressed fully will complete the circuit in the starting system and allow the car to crank. Of course, getting up out here today is a bit of a chore because we have a very conveniently formed ice patch. If it were up to me, I'd probably blame the Black Plague van for it. Let's go over here to the picnic table and have a look at the two switches. Go ahead and turn the light off on the Handycam. We don't need it now, so no sense in having it sap the battery power. This is the one that mounts at the top of the clutch pedal's travel. And as you can see, it's fairly clean. This is a 1998 Ford Escort, so what would that be? About 15 years ago? But for 15 years worth of use, or at least more than a decade's worth of use, this thing certainly doesn't look bad, and meter tests show it to be good. Then there's the other switch, the one that actually allows the starter motor to be energized, and it's another story entirely. Just looking at the outer body of this switch reveals that there is definitely some crud around the opening, and there's definitely some crud around the slider switch. Plus, this switch would be subjected to abuse because if somebody gets in the car and they're in a mad huff, or some idiot driver cuts them off or something like that happens, whether justified or not, the clutch pedal is going to become a possible victim of their emotions. And so this switch has to endure quite a few cycles over its lifetime, and not all of those cycles are gentle. So I pulled this switch out of the car with my dad's help, and we took it in the house and did some multimeter testing on it, and I'll bet you can guess what we found. Now, it is worth noting that whenever any of us, the Keykeeper, myself, or our dad, would drive the car, it never did fail to start for us. However, we were always very careful to make sure that we depressed the clutch pedal fully and decisively before we ever attempted to start the car. And what I have here is my little test setup. This is one way you could do it. As you can see, I've shamelessly borrowed, maybe even stolen, the Keykeeper's multimeter, not because I like it any better than mine, though the built-in stand is certainly a nice touch. But I don't know where I've left my own Radio Shack multimeter. I probably left it laying around somewhere, probably the last place I'll look after some harebrained project that I've been working on. But we'll go ahead and test the multimeter here, make sure that it's ready for us, and it would definitely appear to be. The other way that you could do this test, now keep in mind this is the dangerous way, and I am in no way recommending that you do this, but if you're desperate, you certainly could. You could always remove the clutch safety switch from the car and jumper across the connections so that the starter can always be hot. However, I don't recommend doing that because that allows the possibility of severely abusing your starter by attempting to start the car in gear with the clutch out. It also opens up the possibility to having the car start unexpectedly while it is in gear and causing an accident, property damage, or even someone's death or severe injury. So if you do that, the liability is entirely on you. I'm not recommending it, and I take no responsibility for the results of it. Let's go ahead and hook this meter up to the switch, and I'll demonstrate the problem for you. So here we are with the test setup all ready to go. Now I don't know if it will be agreeable and decide to malfunction on camera for me. It may not. We may just have to prepare ourselves for that possibility. But this should give you a good idea of what it is I'm looking to know. Most of the time when this little switch is activated, the meter will go ahead and sound its beeper and the reading will drop to 0 ohms resistance, or very close to, which is how this switch should work. If you were to be in the car right now and depress the clutch, there is a peg at the clutch pedal that when the clutch pedal is fully depressed would push this peg in. And as you can see, the meter reacts accordingly and sounds its tone. But every now and again, when I work this switch manually, it won't go ahead and make full contact. Of course, it would figure that right now, when I have it on camera, it's the one time that it would decide to work perfectly. And so far it has. There it acted up a little bit. Of course, that's about the luck. Fortunately, this is one of those switches that you can open without destroying, instead of destroying it while you were trying to open it. Here you can see how the switch opens with care and a thin-edged object. The back molding door, I guess you could call that for want of a better way to put it, will come off the switch, followed by this spring. Now watch for the release of this spring, because otherwise it could fling this back door to points in the far beyond. Let's have a look inside the switch here, and you'll see that while Ford was trying to create a high-quality part, you can see that those copper contacts down there are heavily worn. Maybe a shot of deoxit or something similar would get them going again, but in this case it's extremely prudent just to go ahead and replace this whole switch because it's definitely had its time in the sun. So thank you for watching, and feel free to leave a comment if you've got one.